Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Experience with Tara and Louisa.
We are two girls who speak the truth about the struggle of never feeling enough whilst growing up in a world of filters and comparison.
Here we will have raw, relatable and authentic conversations to empower you on your path to self-development.
Come with us on the journey of unlearning.
Welcome back to this week's episode. We are continuing on into our Healing from Toxic Relationship course, giving you guys a little bit of an insight into what to expect and kind of giving our experience into a little bit of it as well. But we wanted this episode to be a follow-on from one we've done previously, which was our From Toxic to Healthy Relationship series. And we wanted this one to be a little bit of a part 2, but it coincides with week 5 in the course because it is about healing from your toxic relationship and moving into a healthy relationship and sort of the dynamics that come with that.
Week 5 in our course is all about preparing yourself for the next relationship or getting healthier in the relationship that you're already in if you're already in one, because the understanding of being in a toxic relationship is it can leave you with some triggers, it can leave you with expectations, it can leave you with a unhealthy nervous system that gets activated in the healthy partnership when, you know, there might not be a trigger present. And so in the week 5, we get you to get really aware of what your warning signs might be in the next relationship, if there are red flags, or what will trigger you, and that will be your part to sort of get you into a healthier space in the healthy relationship. Because often when we get with like a healthier partner, maybe they don't have a toxic background, we want to engage in behavior that makes us feel good about ourselves and that doesn't push them away or trigger them or make them feel judged or under the microscope. Because I know for me, after being with toxic partners, I can feel quite suspicious of people.
It leaves you feeling untrusting of people as well. And I think that it's really important, you know, we talk about this in the course as well, but communication is key in all of this, right? So like learning to communicate all of this with your partner and allowing them to communicate that with you too is really important. So it's about understanding yourself, learning how to communicate that to somebody else, and then learning how to do things differently.
Yeah. So week 5 is about 3 different topics. What we've already discussed, it's about your triggers, it's about your setting bottom line, so non-negotiables for your own behavior in the next relationship or in your current one, and then understanding your love languages so you can best communicate, again, what you need in the relationship and understand what your partner may need.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like all of these 3 sort of go together, but they do.
Yeah.
Like they really bleed into one another. And I think love languages being right at the end is perfect to lead you into week 6 of the course, which is all about like learning what you want in a relationship, because when you learn your love language, you can communicate that to your partner, or you can start to imagine what you want for yourself in your next relationship. And I think that imagination is what starts to like cultivate manifestation going forward. But it is, they work really nicely together. And I guess we'll get into it.
So starting with triggers. So for those of you playing at home that don't know what triggers are, basically when we use the word trigger, we're discussing an emotional response to something in the present moment that is actually from your past. So it brings the past wound into the present moment, and things in the present can trigger that past memory or that past experience or that past trauma by being sort of similar. Like you can see evidence in your present moment with a different lens. Like it can present differently if you're triggered.
Yeah, I love the way you said that, because what it essentially is it's a representation of the past. But it can be dressed up to be something that is in fact, or it can be something that's dressed up like not in reality. Something that is false and that is not actually what's happening to you. So like a really classic example is like partners not answering their phone. You're triggered from your previous relationship that they're out cheating on you. And the reality is like there's a situation happening in front of you. Your partner's not answering their phone. Is it exactly what's happening in the past? Maybe not. Maybe, but maybe not. And understanding your triggers especially moving into a new relationship, it's so important because it's important for us not to lash out at our partner and start to blame them and have expectations on them to meet our needs. Sometimes that's important, and that's when communication comes in, but it's also important for us to learn how to self-regulate through those moments where we understand, hey, this is something that's coming from my past. It feels really real, but I can kind of have that self-talk to say, I'm going to be okay. Like, this isn't actually what's happening to me. If we bring it back to what this episode's about, from toxic to healthy, when you've been in a long-term toxic relationship, it leaves you with some really strong triggers that you can't sort of regulate yourself through. And I think that it's important to shine a light on just how hard that can be.
And I just want to say, and you don't even know they're there until you get into the next relationship or you start dating again. Because when you're single, they're not being activated. And so you're like, oh, you know, I'm free or whatever, I've got out of jail. And then, or you deal with the breakup. But then once you get into the next relationship, your whole nervous system and your response to that person is very different.
Absolutely. And it's not until I think it's like the early stages of a relationship. For me, it's like once I'm in, I'm comfortable, I'm all right. But in that first couple of month period, I am reading everything through my past experience. So if you're hot and cold, if you're not replying in a certain amount of time, or, you know, you don't want to see me as much as I'd like to, instantly I'm triggered that like you're going to leave. So it can be really challenging in that first couple of months of the first relationship, especially when you're learning to trust again. You're learning to trust that new partner.
I feel like with triggers, it can be really hard because it's so intense and physical that it can feel like your gut instinct, because your entire body and your fight or flight is screaming at you about a past experience that you have no other option other than to sort of trust your instincts because it's so loud. But when you come down from that, your frontal cortex switches back on and you have clarity over how it wasn't grounded in reality. Having an awareness over what triggers you allows for you not to act out in a way that lowers your self-esteem. So if we don't have awareness over where our triggers come from and what triggers us in relationships from our past, we are leaving the door open to act out in a way and react to people that once we do have that processing back on in our brains, we might feel shame or we might feel guilt or remorse, or, you know, it's part of that toxic cycle that can play out even in a healthy relationship. It's really important that doing something like this course or doing some sort of work on understanding what your triggers are from the past, it gives you an awareness that when you go into that space, all you need to do is pause and not take action. Seek support from a friend, go for a walk, go to the gym, wait until that processing comes back, give it 30 minutes before your brain switches back on. So you go into your amygdala, which is your fight or flight, and then if you wait 30 minutes, eventually your prefrontal cortex will switch back on. And there's ways you can sort of get it back on. I know you can try and read or do something that's like a harder sort of brain exercise that just forces it back on. So, you know, in a perfect world, that's the processing you want to take. In the moment though, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Especially because you feel so invested in it that it's in reality that you want to fight against it. So you want, you believe it so much that you want to go in there and act upon it, and to actually sit back and take time to allow it to pass, because it's a physiological feeling. Like it takes over your whole body. So it can be really challenging to do what you've just said and sit through it. But what is on the other end is healthy communication with your partner, because you can let them in on that experience of what's going on for you. I know for me, I usually give it a day or so before I bring it up, because I know my partner doesn't exhibit those behaviors at all, and it's always grounded in my past. So I try not to attack. I don't blame. I don't even let him in on that process until the next day.
And that's the gold.
They say, apparently.
Yeah, I was doing some work the other night about how it's really important not to go to other people with the wound too soon, because it can harm your relationship, or it can harm yourself, or it can harm the other person more. And I think observing your feelings and being with them and not acting from that space is the crux of self-development work and the crux of relationship work, because we've all got baggage and that's completely fair. But sometimes things can escalate when they don't need to when we go to somebody else too soon. So our second phase of week 5 is to look at our bottom lines. We do an inventory in the week before about with your toxic relationship, and one of the columns in that inventory is writing about ways that you've acted in the past and ways that you've contributed to that toxic dynamic. So ways that you are not proud of with your behavior. So patterns of behavior that you don't want to continue, that you want to work on in order to cultivate safety and healthy relationships. So an idea for that could be going through your partner's phone or calling them multiple times or accusing them of having female friendships or whatever it might be. So you take that information and then pick 3 of those behaviors that you don't want to participate in again and set bottom lines. So with those 2 or 3 behaviors, you'll create a blanket statement. So no matter what happens in your relationship, I will not do this. And it's important that we set a bottom line that is realistic but also challenging. So we're not going to set a bottom line that is completely like, I'm never going to walk out in an argument or I'm never going to yell. Obviously, that is an ideal place to move towards. However, for you, if that's the case, however, like the likelihood of that happening straight off the bat might be smaller. So we want to set bottom lines that are realistic but challenging.
Absolutely. And look, there's one that I've spoken about previously on this podcast, and it is about like not threatening to leave the relationship. And I think that they don't have to be these such big sort of things, bottom lines. Like they can be subtle. And one of them being subtle is like, I don't want to damage my relationship in the heat of an argument by, creating an insecure attachment between me and my partner by threatening to leave. So it's kind of, that is one of my bottom lines. And to be honest, in the heat of the moment, it's really easy to go there, especially in my mind, because I want power of the situation. I don't want to leave the relationship, but I want the control and I want the power. But I know in the back of my brain and my heart that that's not what I want to do, because I don't want to rupture that connection. And so, yeah, that's been one of my bottom lines throughout my relationship that I've found has been super helpful. So they don't have to be these big things. Like, they can be quite small as well. Okay, so the next one we discuss is red flags. And I didn't want these to be something that we talk about that goes, oh, red flag, like I'm not going there. That's not what I mean. I'm not talking about so much the behavior of others, but more about what you feel inside your body. So when I say a red flag inside your body, I mean, what is your intuition telling you? Because we spend so long in these relationships denying our gut instincts about stuff that we ignore what our true self would like or what our true self thinks and feels based on maybe an anxious attachment. So understanding what goes on in your body is a massive part of moving through to a healthy relationship, because I know from my experience when I'm in a toxic relationship, you get those God-given instincts that tell you to run, and you squish and squish and squish in order to keep that person because they demonstrate something about you. So if they're in your life, then they're making you feel worthy, and that's the toxic cycle. And so you deny how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your world and your reality. And I think learning to understand that and really check in with yourself throughout that process, for me anyway, has been really healing. And I have gone into relationships between my last relationship, my current relationship, where those red flags have been present in my body, and I've had to talk that through with other people and make a conscious decision not to go down that path. And those sorts of feelings are stuff like worrying. Like I find worry to be one, and this isn't for everybody, this is just my experience, but worrying so much about the relationship demonstrates to me that I don't feel safe. And so if I'm constantly wondering if they like me, am I doing the right thing? Did I say something wrong? That's a clear indication that I don't feel comfortable in this relationship, which, to a degree you're going to feel at the beginning anyway. But over a long period of time, that's been demonstrated to me to be shown that I'm actually unsafe.
I think as well, it's really important at the beginning of the dating period, instead of pushing our own integrity onto others, witnessing and observing somebody else and in their own value system and seeing that for what it means and for what it is, and understanding that we can't push our own integrity or values onto someone else. But if they show us a value difference that is something we wouldn't act from in our lives, then we need to see that for its whole understanding and be honest about that. I think what we forget we can do when we start a relationship is, instead of ignoring the red flags, we can see that person for their flaws and their positives. So instead of getting into a relationship and ignoring all the negatives and just focusing on the positives and not telling our friends about the things that didn't sit well with us, one thing to practice is looking at both. So looking at the whole picture of someone and saying to yourself, despite seeing these flaws, I'd still like to continue, but maintaining like a self-honesty or an honesty with others around those flaws, because everyone has flaws and everyone has flags that might present differently and come out later. They might present really well at the start and then later down the track things sort of unravel. I think it's important that we don't lie to ourselves at the beginning of relationships or throughout the relationship process, and that we maintain a whole healthy picture of someone. We can then make an informed decision whether we want to accept the flags or not accept the flags.
I fully agree with you, and I think that you absolutely need sort of an ongoing conscious awareness about this person that you're entering sort of a relationship with, or maybe dating or something like that. I think it's really important when we think about what we feel in our gut. So what's our body telling us about someone? I think our gut usually will tell us. All right, our last segment for week 5 and for the potty today is understanding love languages. And we dissect this a lot in the course, and I'll just briefly run over it now because I think it's important to acknowledge that love languages are the way that we give and receive love, but they're also ways that our partners give and receive love. And it's a 4-way dynamic, because the way I give love is going to be different to the way I receive love, and the way I give my partner love is going to be different to the way he receives love, right? So there's lots of moving parts in this, but a healthy, fun activity to do with someone is to sit down and you do your love language task and figure out your love language, and then you sit down and get their partner to do theirs and understand how they give and receive love too. And I think this opens up the path for, really learning how to like give in your relationship, because we all want to be loved, we all want to be admired, and we all want to be, adored and all that sort of stuff. But like, how good does it feel to love someone else and then feel loved too? Like it makes you feel good about yourself to know you're meeting your partner's needs. And I just think it's a fun way to just like include them into the dynamic.
I feel like this was such an eye-opening learning for me, because I think that I'm giving all this love and energy into giving love in the way that I give love, and my partner might not be receiving it because that's not how their language is set up to give and receive love. And understanding where you're both different can change the relationship, because a lot of relationship issues can come from this grief around thinking that you're giving effort and the other person thinks you're not. There can be this issue where, but I'm doing this, but I need you to do this. And it's like, well, but I'm doing this. So why can't you see it that way? And so we just have to see the partnership and the differences in the love languages as like an asset, and learn how to meet each other's needs for each other so that you can improve the relationship.
I honestly would say that this is one of the biggest ingredients to a successful relationship.
Totally. Because
if there's a discrepancy amongst this, you're never going to be able to meet each other where they need to be met. And like you said, you can be giving so much and you'll be like, why can't you see how much I'm giving you? And they're going to be like, I don't feel it. and I don't see it. And until you guys figure that out, it's not going to work. And in a perfect world, like you give and receive it in ways that you both feel and understand. But the reality is that it's not that simple. And when you unpack what the love languages are, it's important to understand that the way you see things and the way you value things in your life are going to be really different. I know for me, when I was growing up, I had a real lack of trust in words, because in my first relationship, I was sold the perfect story, and the perfect story all came from words and no action. So for me, words of affirmation don't mean shit, but they're something that my partner might really value, and I need to learn to give something that I may not value. I don't see the point in giving words. Like, I think it's more about action. But I know even for you, like, you love words. And so like God. I've learned in our relationship to give you words.
I'm the wordiest girl ever.
Yeah, which is...
I love a word.
It's amazing that...
I love a words of affirmation. Just bring it on.
Yeah, like... But for me, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love words, but I find a lack of trust in words.
Yes, you're suspicious of words.
Yeah, words don't mean much to me at all. And I've been really lucky. My partner's pretty well rounded across all 5 of the love languages, so I don't really have to worry about communicating what I need. Like, he kind of knows, but it's the way I give it back, because I don't give words at all. Because I think to me they mean nothing, so to everyone else they must mean nothing too. And I've learned in our relationship that they do. They mean stuff to other people, so I have to put that effort in.
I mean, I'm sort of well-rounded. Like, if you give me love in any way, shape or form, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you want to figure it out, if you want to learn, just Google it. It's on the internet.
Yeah. We put the love languages quiz in the course
so
for you and your future partner to do, or your current partner. And there's a few questions to sort of answer around that reflection. But, yeah, that's all we've got time for today.
Amazing. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week for our final week on manifestation. Thank you so much for listening to this episode.
If you liked it, please share it with someone you think would benefit from it, or share it on your socials and tag us.
If you don't already, follow us on TikTok and Instagram to stay up to date with us and our latest self-development courses.
Thank you for listening.